And so in this one we're gonna, let's again, we'll go back to the meditating mode. And is okay, is it helpful if you, I mean, I could just, I guess it's probably, for this one I'll do that. I'll do again the guided thing. Okay. So again, you visualize like the Guru Buddha atop your head. You think, please help me to realize and understand, gain insight into the teachings on karma. I can progress to Buddhahood. The Guru Buddha is happy, pours down rainbow 5-colored light and nectar. First, it purifies and washes away all obstacles to your meditation. And then it fills your body up from the bottom to the top with like rainbow nectar. So your body becomes like pure, crystalline or translucent, like made of light, like a rainbow body. So we think, okay, so now I'm going to meditate. I meditated just now on some general ideas about karma, but now I'm going to meditate on the specific karma. So we're going to use the example of harsh speech. Actually, let's each bring to mind, like think back. Could be any time in your life, actually. So think back to some point in your life. And remember the definition. Actually, I want to go through it here. So I want to go through the key points. So the point here is, the example is harsh speech. Right? But so what we're talking about now, there are like we talked about this before, there are incomplete karmas and there are complete karmas. So we want to go through a complete karma of harsh speech. So I want you to think of a time, first of all, where there was a specific person, actually, and the person was there. You want to use that kind of example. Right? So it could have been, you know, it could have been a stranger, could have been a friend, a family member. But a time when you said something, and the definition of harsh speech is you said, it doesn't have to be, it could have been screaming or saying curse words, but it also could have not been that. There was the idea is that you used words, you used your voice, you used words in a way that was intended to hurt somebody else's feelings, to make them feel bad. And so for it to be a complete karma, first of all, there was the basis, which was another sentient being. It doesn't even have to have been human, right? It could have been an animal. But so think of a time, think of a specific person who you at least once in your life said something that was hurtful, harsh. Harsh in the sense that hurt their feelings. So for a complete karma, right, first of all, there was another person involved, another sentient being involved. And you knew they were a person, you know, you didn't think, you weren't confused about that. And now this third point is important, is just in contemplating complete karma, right? Often we don't think about it. So this is just a tool, actually, for contemplating what happened in order to understand it. Right? Okay, so now we're going to think, okay, so I'm thinking of this person. And on that day, when I did harsh speech to them, there was a mental affliction in my mind, an afflictive emotion, as it's called. Right? And check for yourself, oh, what was my afflictive emotion? We often don't analyze this. Right? With harsh speech, oftentimes it's anger. Sometimes it's other things, though, like resentment or pride. I was being prideful. You know, it could be something else. More often than not, it's some form of anger or animosity or hatred. Right. So you actually analyze, okay, wow, I was looking at that person or interacting with them in some way. And the truth is, in my mind, before I ever said a word, this has to happen first, right? There's a mental affliction, because you can't, the behavior of moving your mouth always comes, it's always led by the mind. Right? Even if you weren't aware of it at the time. Looking back, one can see, okay, it's actually true. You know, I'm going to use the example anger. Like, wow, I got angry at them. Maybe if I'm even honest with myself, it was building up. Like, oh wow, I was a little annoyed or frustrated. I was unhappy in some way. And then it built up until finally I was sort of directing the venom at them, blaming them for something, and angry at them. You can even like remember back to the reason why you got angry. Okay, yeah, my mind eventually got controlled by a mental affliction, which is part of what happens in negative karma. And then out of that mental affliction, if I'm honest with myself, which sometimes I don't want to be, right, about these kind of negative things, I developed a wish to harm that person. Right? That was actually the karma. Like, the mental affliction itself of anger, remember we talked about this, it's like they call it the path to karma, or it's like, it's not yet the karma. The karma is where because of that mental affliction, that afflictive emotion, let's say the example of anger at this person, I actually developed a wish to hurt them. Right? And the wish to say something that would hurt them. And if I think back, or if each of us has to do this, I think back, wow, it's true actually. I may not have noticed it may have happened quickly, but there was annoyance or agitation, frustration, anger, whatever, hatred, whatever the feeling was. And from that destructive emotion, I developed an actual wish to say something hurtful and to hurt their feelings, to hurt them in some way. And you look back into your own mind, into your own heart back then. You see, wow, yeah, there was a moment, or longer than a moment. Sometimes it was just a moment where then I acted quickly. Other times you can check for yourself. It may have been, sometimes it goes on, right, where you plan it out for hours, days, what you're going to say. But whether it was a moment or whether it was a long period of time, there was an afflictive, destructive emotion, and then there was a wish to do harm, a wish to make the person feel hurt, bad, using my voice. And then out of that motivation, I did we have to actually, because this is introspection, right? Okay, so I had the afflictive emotion or the destructive emotion of anger or whatever. Then I had this wish to hurt the person. And then I actually said words, motivated that way. And that's really the karma, right? I had a negative motive of wishing to harm. And then I actually spoke words. In a certain tone of voice, certain kind of words, I had a certain facial expression. And I said the whole statement, whatever it was that I said. Right? I began it, there was a middle, and there was an end. And that other person heard what I said. And actually here I just want to pause, like if I'm contemplating this, right, then I say, wow, that was like I'm like a professional at negative karma. I did that really completely. Right? Those are all the steps to flawlessly creating a negative karma. So I really did that. So it's a complete negative karma then. And so oftentimes, like either I don't want to think about my own negative karma, I just avoid the topic, or if I do think about it, I sort of like either blame the other person or I sort of beat myself up. In this instance, none of that's relevant, actually. That's not the purpose here. The purpose here is just honesty and analysis and understanding karma, understanding ourselves, in order to then change. So the goal here isn't to beat myself up. It's certainly not to blame the other person. It's also not even to blame myself. It's to understand, actually. Wow, so that's the process, right? So we actually pause. Wow, that's the process. I give rise to a destructive or afflictive emotion. Then I want to hurt somebody, and then I do an action that hurts them. And now we can ask the question from a karmic point of view, so what's wrong with that? That's the Buddha's saying that's negative. It's destructive. And so as we've said in the class, now there are many, many ways to think about it. Like one is, wow, I hurt that person. this is just empathy as a first step. Right? Like, they're a sentient being who suffers just like me, and I cause them to suffer more on that day through my words and my motive. And if so one, I mean, this is a preliminary point, it's mentioned somewhere in the text, so we can actually pause and just empathize. Wow, they got hurt, actually. How did they feel when I said that? What was their experience like when I said that? Like, I added suffering to this world in that moment. This is a world that has enough suffering just to begin with. And every person I meet has a lot of suffering. Wow, the purpose of my life certainly isn't to add more suffering to the world. In that moment I did, but that's not who I want to be. That's not what I want to bring into this world. But I did. There could actually be, if you really contemplate just that one point, there could be something almost horrifying about that. To have intentionally caused suffering to somebody else who was already suffering. And then there are certain points, key points to contemplate. Right, so the first step, though, just notice, right? The first step was really to look at this whole process of how do I go about creating negative karma. Okay, so I see another, there's a correct recognition of them as a person, I mean. Right? Out of an afflictive emotion, I develop a negative motive, and then I do something destructive that hurts somebody in some way. So just the hurting somebody in and of itself is kind of horrifying. Then the Buddha also added various kinds of karmic results of that. So one that we often, again, this is just what the Buddha said. You can check it out, contemplate it for yourself. But the first kind of karmic result of that, right? Since it was they say any complete karmic action like that, one result is an entire rebirth in the lower realms. And so if you're contemplating honestly, that would be horrifying, right? The idea, wow, that one interaction, right? It was a purely negative karma. There was nothing ambiguous about it. Right? It was done in a complete way, with a negative afflictive emotion, negative motivation, and I brought the action fully to completion, and was done with it. Right? Did it. Fully did the action. And I didn't immediately sort of, change it. I just moved on. So one kind of result of that is for me to take an entire, if that ripens at the time of death, it would lead me to a rebirth in the lower realms. An entire bad lifetime. Just from that one thing. And according to Buddhism, this is just a natural law. Right? This is not somebody else punishing me. It's not like it's not the Buddha, and it's not some Lord of Death. There's no judge here. It's like the natural process of karma. Is that one result of that is that I will take rebirth. If I don't purify that karma, I will take rebirth in the lower realms. From that one karma. We studied, and we'll go into detail, but we studied the lower realms in the long run, so we know a little bit about that. So imagine, right, one whole lifetime or more, one or more whole lifetimes in the lower realms because of that. The effects of that action which were done, and actually you can check, right? I mean, you analyze, the Buddha says, right, An action done motivated by the wish to harm somebody else for sure leads to impermanence. Right? If I did something out of the wish to hurt somebody, and I did it completely, then there is one main result of that is the ripened result, which is rebirth in lower realms. Another kind of result of that is what they call experiences similar to the cause. So what that means is, like, whether it's while I'm in the lower realms, or also then in future lives, but particularly this is referring to in future lives when I'm again human also, I'll experience people saying harsh, mean things to me. Actually, even in this life, we can see that, right? If you say harsh things to other people, you're more likely to have harsh things said to you. That's for sure true. And what this teaching is saying is that that kind of karma goes on and on. Right? It increases, as we said earlier. So if I say harsh speech, right, then in this life, I'll hear more harsh things. And in future lives, I'll be reborn in places and in families and among people who are harsh, who are mean, who say harsh things. And you think about the suffering that causes, right? The suffering you cause to somebody else, and that you'll have experienced whatever they felt in their heart, you'll feel similar feelings in the future. I'll feel similar things in the future. That's what we each are thinking. By hurting somebody else, I hurt myself. And then we can actually see this next point, right? So if I'm reborn, if I did that action, and then I'm reborn, and in this life it happens, and in future lives I'm reborn, where again there's harsh speech, you can see how it's very obvious, right? That then also I'll have the tendency to do that again. Right? First of all, I have the habit from this life of speaking harshly. If I don't change that, purify that karma. And then if I'm reborn in a place where other people are speaking harshly, of course I'll just start again, saying harsh things back. And in that way, the karma, if I don't purify it, becomes or stays endless, right? It becomes like an endless back and forth. We can see examples of that even in the world, right? Where groups of people or families or in family, right, where somebody's hurt somebody and somebody hurts somebody back, and it just goes around and around and around without any end. What the Buddha's saying is that could go on from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. That until I purify it, I can't wait for somebody else to do that. Right? Nobody else can purify my karma. But if I don't purify this, that will be my experience, right? So I'll take rebirth in lower realms, hear harsh speech there and in other lives, in human lives, then I'll continue to be a harsh speaker myself, and the cycle will just go around and around and around of this kind of endless hurt, endless mutual harmony. And the last of these four kind of karmic results is also the environment itself will be like that. Right? So I already said that, like being reborn in a place that's loud and harsh and rough, where people aren't gentle, aren't supportive of each other, aren't kind to each other. A rough place. And if I contemplate these points, and then I think back to that original action, that, wow, I gave rise to that afflictive emotion. I developed a wish to harm, and I harmed them. And I set in motion, actually, in that moment, right? What can be, if I don't purify it, this kind of endless cycle of misery. And if I really contemplate this, it's like, wow, there's more than enough misery already in the world. I must be insane. to ever want to hurt somebody else through my words. First of all, like I could, now I'm just contemplating, like for my own, my own contemplation here, right? We do it, each of us doing this. It's totally insane, actually, right? Like in that moment that I think I was going to be happy, I thought somehow that would make me happy to say that. That would make things better. Right? What in the world could I possibly have been thinking? Right? It almost feels that way. Like not to blame oneself, but just to recognize, oh my goodness, it's insane. It's like drinking poison, thinking it's going to make me healthy. Right? Like, or worse, it's like, what's the word like? You know, it'd be like eating food that had you know, those kinds of bacteria in it that kill people, thinking that would make me happy. Whereas I thought it would make me somehow feel better to be harsh to that person. But the reality is, if I look at it honestly for myself, is I was miserable when I was saying it, right? There's nothing fun about having an afflictive, about being angry or having an afflictive emotion. Then I hurt that other person who was already hurting enough themselves. I set in motion a karmic relationship where then they would have the tendency to be harsh back to me. I set it up so that I myself have a karma that can throw me to lower realms. And I set up a pattern that could just go on and on, right? Where then in some future life, they'll be harsh to me, I'll be harsh to them, I'll be around harsh people, I'll continue to be harsh, hurting people and being hurt. And the idea of that just going on endlessly. And the only person who can stop that is me. I have the power to stop it. So I have to analyze for myself, like in the future, how do I want to behave around speech? Like not everybody's going to do what I want. That's not the nature of this planet. Not everything is going to go my way. Not everybody's going to treat me exactly how I want them to treat me. Nobody gets that. That's just not the nature of reality. But like, do I want to relate to that through harsh speech? What does that do for me? Or is there some other way I'd like to interact with other beings? You get the idea here, is if we're contemplating this well, if we're meditating on this well, there shouldn't be a moralistic feeling. There shouldn't be like the Buddha said, don't talk harshly or something. The feeling should be more like, oh my goodness, ooh, of course I would, like, what a horrible idea even. Like, I don't want to behave that way. Any more than I want to like smash my hand under a giant hammer or something. It's like, why in the world would I want to do that? It causes suffering, mainly to me, and then also to others. Like, so that a feeling of almost like aversion or disgust. Ordinarily we have disgust for like dirty things, right? Like, you know, if somebody said, oh, this food has fecal matter on it, we would feel some feeling of like not wanting to go near it. Similar like that, the idea of doing harsh speech, we would feel almost like, oh, total misery for myself and for others. So it would be like almost like an inner resolve, an inner insight and an inner resolve that that whole process is miserable. Yes, people may say things to me sometimes, right? But I don't want to say anything to them like that. I don't want them to suffer, and I don't want to suffer. And if the impulse, like, and then I just want to go back one last thing about this, right? So then, first thing is, if I start to give rise to the afflictive emotion in the future, I'll try to stop it right in the moment. If I can stop it, I will. If I can't, then I certainly will try to stop myself from giving rise to any impulse to harm. Because there's a difference, right? If I can stop the anger itself, great. If I can't, at least I can stop myself from wanting to harm. And certainly what I can definitely stop is from actually doing the action of harming. I can be silent. I can walk away. I can not say anything. And I can cultivate patience. And so the idea here is that there should come a feeling of, I really want to do that. Because it will make others happy, but also mainly it'll make me happy. And less miserable. And then I can share that with others. Another way of saying the same thing is like a child who's touched a burner on the stove, then they learn to sort of they see it hurts, and so they want to stay away from that. It would almost feel like that, right? Even the idea of speaking harshly is like a fire that I don't want to touch with my fingers. I don't want to go even close to that, because it's a source of pain.